Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of True Love Talks. Today I'd like to talk about the royal family and the divine right to rule, because I mentioned it a couple of times in my latest videos, one of which was the decoding of the king's coronation on my other channel. If you haven't seen it, you may want to go watch it. It seems that quite a few people don't like the idea that these people have the divine right to rule. However, they do. So allow me to elaborate as to why and why it shouldn't bother you. When she kisses him, he remembers. It's as if his past lives come flooding back to him, much like when we remember who we are by knowing all is love. It's likely you have heard the line from Shakespeare that all the world's a stage, but perhaps you didn't realize that it was literal. Earth is literally a stage, and we are living out the story that is written in the stars. This story is the tarot play. The tarot play is the same as in a deck of cards. This is why we have royalty. Every single one of us has a role to play in the grand universal play of life. This story is preordained. It's planned out. It's written already. So the idea of free will is an illusion, and that's probably something that a lot of people are also going to be upset about. The way in which this story is told is that there was a period of higher consciousness and a period of lower consciousness. We are starting to come out of the lowest period of consciousness, or the absence of Christ consciousness. So we fell in consciousness. And in order to return to remembering who we really are, we must rise in consciousness. Now, this has to do with being ruled over, because in falling from consciousness and forgetting that we are the gods, we have control over our own experience. We created people to rule over us. And so we live in a dualistic world where we have a pyramid structure of these few rule over the many. The only way to set yourself free is to do that internally. So this is where a lot of people get angry, because if you are physically minded, you need to understand we live in a metaphysical world, not a physical world. In order to escape this tarot wheel, we need to be woken up. If everything here was peachy keen, perfect paradise, you wouldn't have any reason to wake up. When you are unconscious, when you are asleep, you see the world as fine, that there's nothing wrong with this place. Yes, there's bad things happening on the news, and there's death and there's accidents, but you accept it as part of this reality. And so nothing really seems out of the ordinary. And then there may be something that happens that strikes you as unusual. And then you start to see things a little bit differently. What people will call waking up is realizing that this place is not what it seems to be. There's some sort of event that you go through that jolts you out of this stupor, this belief that this world is all there is, and that you're here to go to work, make money, buy a house, have a family, and that's it. So this waking up is what the controllers, as we call them, the controllers, are here to do. They're playing this story out for you. You can look at this as these people are pure evil, and they are doing all sorts of evil things behind the scenes and living off of the people and leeching off of the people, and you hate them and they're vile, contemptible, soulless beings. But that's not entirely true. Now, in better times, when we were not fallen in consciousness and we had some awareness of what this place was and the truth wasn't hidden, there were people who were kings and pharaohs who taught the truth to the people. Because of the way that history has been written or rewritten, we've been told that these people were slaves, that these people were oppressed, which is not true. Even if history didn't exist and this is all just a story that's part of this infrastructure, it's still relevant. Back then, there were pharaohs. Pharaoh and a king are the same thing. A pharaoh is someone who has gone through the alchemical process, married the opposites, has become anointed king. They are walking with God, so to speak. And they would be teaching the knowledge to those who haven't yet gone through that process. There were people back then who needed help, and they were grateful to the kings and the pharaohs. There was no us versus them. It was all a support system. Now, however, we live in a world where there's this us versus them mentality, and the knowledge needed to be protected because they knew that we were going to forget, because they were aware of the cycles. They were aware of this fall in consciousness that was coming. And this is why they built these megalithic structures, so that when the time came, we would find them and remember. Same with the ancient texts. So here we are at the lowest point of consciousness. We've always had kings. We've always had people to rule over us. It's just how they go about it that's the difference. And here we have these people at the top who live very cushy lives, and us at the bottom slaving away, feeding the system so that the people at the top can live these cushy lives. All of this is part of the story. It's part of the infrastructure that's required to wake you up. Even the monetary system is structured to wake you up. The monetary system is a control device. Part of that is to show that this world is messed up, because no matter how hard we work, we don't achieve the accomplishments or the goals or the wealth of the elite. The elite are at the top, and there's this glass ceiling that separates them from us. We're not allowed to socialize with them. We're not allowed to marry them. We're not allowed to have their payroll. We're not allowed to have their jobs. We're not allowed to have the exposure that they have. All of that is part of the show. Part of what that is to show you is that it's absurd that we pay to live here. It's absurd that there are people who are paid much more for what they do versus what you do. And to realize that there are different people here, that they are treated differently than you are. When you look at these people as an awakened person and you realize that they're different from us, one of the major differences is that they are inverted. This is part of the mirror. They have to look different from us so that they can tell who's who. And it's likely that they aren't all aware of who they are. If you are awakening, then you are aware of law of assumption and law of attraction. And you are aware that you have the power to create your own experience. However, if you are not aware of other things in this world, you are perpetually going to be comparing yourself to the elites and thinking that you can't have what they have because it's built into society. Now, where did these people come from, and why do they have so much money? Because you look back at the Industrial Revolution, quite a lot of these people rose up the ranks and seemingly created money out of nothing, because these people came to America and they built railroads, skyscrapers, factories. They created entire industries from nothing. It's impossible to build a railroad across the entire country from nothing, with nothing. So where did the money come from? And the population of America at that time was not very high, and the money they had was not very much. It wasn't the poor people that paid for the railroad. It was other wealthy people. other wealthy people who were industrialists just like them, building factories and expanding into other states, which is why they needed the railroads in the first place. These people didn't rise up the ranks. They didn't come from nowhere or nothing. These people were written into the script, written into the story, part of the elite families, and they were the ones who were supposed to build this story of the industrialists rising up the ranks and coming from nothing. Considering most of these elite wealthy families that are still around today are part of the royal families, that tells you that they didn't just happen to be in the right place at the right time. So these people became American royalty because they were already European royalty. People just didn't know it. Same with celebrities today. We're given the impression that these celebrities are just random people who happen to strike it rich because they have a specific talent. But they're not. They're all related. They're planted in certain families or they're planted in certain situations. Okay, let me get back to the divine right to rule argument, because it seems to be rooted in this deep-seated greed or deep-seated resentment and hatred for people who have power, money, and authority. The commonly held perspective of truthers is that who are these imposters and why do they have the right to rule over us, and they're just taking power and control over us and we have to get rid of them, which is the wrong way to look at things. It is disempowering, it is full of hatred, and you're not seeing the world in the right way. This is an extreme dualistic perspective. You need to get to a perspective of unity consciousness. You need to be able to see the whole, which means you see the two sides of the coin as one. You see how it serves a purpose. Now, a lot of people have an issue with that idea as well. They think that seeing the duality as one means that a perpetrator is the same as the victim. No, it means that they complement one another. You cannot have a perpetrator without the victim. You cannot have a victim without a perpetrator. However, they both attract one another. So you can't say that they are the same, and yet they are the same in a complementary way. So you cannot have a ruler without a servant, and you cannot have a servant without a ruler. So when you realize these people rule over you, when you realize that the power imbalance exists, and you realize that you're a sucker and a slave and a servant at the bottom of a pyramid you'll never get out of, it makes you mad. Naturally, the instinct is, well, I gotta get out of the pyramid. I gotta take them down. How are you going to do that? You can't. It's not possible. There is no getting out of the pyramid in the physical sense without getting out of it internally first. These people are here to reflect back to you the power imbalance, to reflect back to you of your divine right to rule over your own life. These people are here to reflect back to you of your rightful position in this world. You are divine, and you need to remember who you are. When you do that, you have access to all of the riches in the world. These people manifest this money. They don't get it from you. A lot of these celebrities make millions not because you pay them. I mean, their salaries are absurd. They get paid for who they are. Someone like Johnny Depp is an actor. He's made $600 million 40 years. He's worked over 40 years. He's part of the families. And if you look at any other actor who has had regular parts for 40 years, they haven't come close to $600 million. They never will. So what differentiates a Johnny Depp from a regular person who works regularly as an actor? Well, the difference is he's Johnny Depp. You get paid for who you are, but you have to remember who you are. So you look at these people and you're angry. You're angry at them because they have what you want. this is not the way to go about getting it. You will never get something if you are angry at someone else for having what you want. Because you're telling the universe, you don't want that. They don't deserve it, so I can't have it either. And it's also physically minded. It's also materialistic, greedy, resentful, bitter, hateful. The bigger part is the control. The bigger part is all of these evil, heinous things they allegedly do, for which we have no evidence. We have stories. We have things that are put on the world stage for you to consume, to believe these stories, but we have no actual evidence. Do these heinous things happen in this world? Yes, they do. Are these people all doing these heinous things? We have no idea. We only know what they tell us, and it's possible that they're doing these heinous things. It's unlikely. It's more likely that it's just a story. They could all just be putting on the show for you, or they could be enlightened beings who have gone through the awakening process and have decided to come back to play these parts in order to help wake you up. And that is what we're going through right now in waking up and coming out of the story, coming out of the Pharaoh Tarot, coming out of the Wheel I Am Shakespeare. We realize that it's all just a show. We see the duality as unity. We can appreciate that it's all just a show. We can appreciate what these people are showing to us and what their true role is here. And you realize that you have the opportunity now to choose whether you want to exit out or if you want to come back here and rule, help the next generation to wake up. One of the comments that was left on my coronation decode video was a very, very good comment, and I don't know whether it's a he or she. I'm going to use he just for simplicity's sake. So he asked, are we not all created equal? Now, you have to understand, what does equal mean? Are you identical to your brother or your sister or your mother or your father or your neighbor or the person down the street? No. Everyone is unique and different. Even if you are half of a twin, you're still unique and different. What a boring world it would be if everybody looked the same and if everybody was the same. You wouldn't grow, you wouldn't learn. It would be boring. You would already know everything. So, is everyone born equal? No. No, we're not. What is meant by equal? Well, we're born in God's image. That's really the only equality that we have. Now, as I said before, there's the real living beings and the NPCs. So NPCs are on both sides of the fence. Now, when I first talked about this, when I first talked about the inverts, they're here to show us the story. They're here to wake us up. A lot of people had a hard time with that, which is fair. Of course, it's a hard pill to swallow. And they didn't want to believe that certain celebrities were awake because of some of the things they do, because they're viewing a lot of their performances or behaviors as satanic. After a while, you come to realize that that's not satanic behavior. And you also come to realize that it is easy to fake it. It's easy to be awake and pretend to not be awake. And you, as someone who is awake, would know this because you're forced to lie. You're forced to lie to your coworkers. You're forced to lie to your family members and everybody else in society that you come up to, because you realize that once you try to tell everybody, they are not capable of hearing it. You are capable of lying and capable of living a dual life. So that is how easy it is for them to live a dual life. If you are aware of who you are and that you are playing a role here, it's very easy to do that. I also think that a lot of the resentment against the elites and their right to rule over us comes from this frustration of being subject to them and not being free, which is part of the process. It puts the pressure on you to rise. So When you realize that this is the situation, that you are trapped in a box, basically, you want to get free of it. Before, you didn't know. You were content to go to work and live your slave job and your slave life, and you had no idea you were a slave. Well, then you realize you're a slave and you don't want to be a slave anymore. So it's all a matter of perspective. You were content before when you didn't know you were a slave. Someone told you were a slave, and all of a sudden you're angry. The whole point of it is to force you to go within. It's to force you to find your way out of the prison that you're in, out of the pyramid, out of the system, out of the matrix. I don't want to be part of it. And so this makes people want to live off grid. The problem is that's not going to get you out of the system, because you cannot live free of the system. You rely on it for roads, cars, food, water, money. You need money to function here. No matter where you live, you need money to function here. Unless you are capable of living in the wild, off nature, and you manage to find some plot of land that is not owned by the government, then you have to live in the system. If you get hurt, you have to go to the hospital. If you need to build something, you need tools. This is what people don't take into consideration. They think that living off grid is going to get them out of the system, but it doesn't. The sooner you understand that, the better, because a lot of people think that this physical solution is what they're after. That's what they need. And it's not. You cannot have someone grant you permission to rule your own life. Those two concepts are contradictory. If you look at it as simple as you are a child and your parents rule over your life, there comes a time where you exert your authority over your own life. You tell your parents, you do not make my decisions for me anymore. I am an adult. And for some people, it's harder than others, because you might have controlling parents, or you might have parents who are very involved in your life, or even if they're not, you might make them controlling through your own mind. And so you might live your life to please your parents. But regardless, there comes a point in your life where you have to assert your authority over your own life. It's the same in the realm. You don't go to the head of the pyramid. You're not going to be able to go to King Charles and say, hey, listen, I think it's about time that you let me live my own life and you stop controlling my life. First of all, King Charles has no idea who you are. He doesn't care. You are a servant to the system. There isn't anything that he can do to free you from the system. You serve a purpose for me, and I serve a purpose for you, so no. A lot of people, when they first wake up and realize that they're part of the slave system, especially when our rights were being infringed upon, they believed that they needed to go to the power people and say, hey, I don't like what you're doing. You're infringing on my rights. Give me my rights back. No one who is infringing on your rights is inclined to want to give them to you. They're not going to give them back because it doesn't serve what their agenda is. So if you want autonomy, you cannot ask permission. You have to take it. Now, this doesn't mean you take it by force. So during the situation where people were saying, oh, you're infringing on my rights, I want my rights back, a lot of people were protesting. It didn't do anything. Protesting does not accomplish anything. All the protests are staged performances to give you the impression that it actually accomplishes something. It doesn't accomplish anything. All it does is raise awareness, and that's only if there are people there to see it. So if you are protesting something that the system doesn't want anyone to see, they're not going to put it on television and no one's going to know about it. So it's pointless. Unless you agree that you're going to protest until your demands are met, it isn't going to accomplish anything. And how does that cause a problem for the person you're protesting to or against? It doesn't. So the other solution is strike. Strike is a little bit more powerful because you are refusing to work for the person who has power over you. So your employer, for example. If your employer is not providing comfortable work environment for whatever reason, and you've spoken to them and they're not being reasonable, or you're not being reasonable, and you can't come to an agreement, then the employees will go on strike and say, I'm not working until my demands are met. I don't feel appreciated here. If everyone goes on strike, if it's just you, it makes no difference. They can just fire you and find somebody else to take your job. If the entire staff goes on strike and shuts the company down, then you have a problem. Well, in most cases, the employer will bring in replacement staff to take over and keep the company running. My point is, they're not going to set you free. If you want to be free, you have to escape. So, how do you escape? If you can't escape into the wild and you cannot leave the system and you cannot get off grid because that's not leaving the system, how do you escape? How do you get out of the control of the controllers? Well, in the physical sense, you can't. This world is not physical. This world is metaphysical. So you have to get out of the physical mindset and you have to see this world for what it is, which is metaphysical. And what this system, this infrastructure is doing is providing you with, first of all of the information and the means necessary for you to go within in order to get out. Now you have to stop looking at this world as a prison that you were put in against your will and you don't want to be here. This perspective is not helpful and it's not true. We're in a mind creation, part of a story, part of a torus. It is a mind creation. And that part of it is what creates the prison. It's a prism. So a prism is a narrow spectrum through which you view the world. In order to free yourself, you have to change that perspective. So how does perspective free you from your serfdom? Because, as I said before, the natural instinct of someone who feels oppressed and someone who feels that they're in a prison is to break free of the prison in the physical. It isn't, well, I should go within and find my way out that way. However, that's the only way out. And a lot of people get angry at that. They call it new age bullshit. Sorry to tell you, but it's the truth. And this is your way out. Because it's a mind creation, then you have to change the mind. You look within, meditate, and change your perspective. As you go through the ascension process, your awakening process, your awareness of what this place is changes. It elevates. You get higher and higher in terms of perspective on this place. While you are in the physical mindset or the dualistic mindset, you will see things as us versus them. You will see things as there's that outside trying to get me. And all of the things external that have an effect on you will be holding you back or preventing you from getting things that you want in life. When you realize that the duality is an illusion and you start to see the duality in everything as a whole, you free yourself from the us versus them mentality. When you see the world as a performance and a play and a stage, and that you are just merely playing a role here, and your main purpose is to awaken and to rise to Christ consciousness, a lot of that stuff on the world stage, including in your own life, doesn't affect you anymore. This can only happen when you change your state of consciousness. Your ultimate goal is to be free of the tarot play, if you want to be. You may not want to be. You may want to be part of the tarot play. The only way you can do that is to get into Christ consciousness. And the only way that you do that is to raise the Kundalini. Everything here is all about Kundalini, and everything on the external is showing that to you. That's what I was showing in the King's Coronation video. These people have the divine right to rule because they create the infrastructure, they create everything here that we participate in, because all of that is embedded with the truth. And it is hidden underneath this illusion of duality, this illusion of the evil satanic elite who are ruling over you, and you poor suppressed serf, you are beholden to them. Okay, so another point that was made in this comment was, okay, it's fine and everything that they are rulers and that they rule over us, but why do they have to be so evil? Why do they have to be taking advantage of us? Because that's the story that we're in. And yeah, it sucks. But we're at the bottom of consciousness. We're at base consciousness. It's so gross. We're just coming out of it. We're starting to remember. What do you mean by they're treating us so badly? I think this partly comes from the conspiracy mindset of they're putting out chemtrails and they're poisoning our food and they're brainwashing us and mind controlling us and lying to us and taking money from us on taxes. And they are a manifestation of you, of the system, of the universe. Say, for example, you're concerned about chemtrails, which we talked about in my last live chat, and you're angry about chemtrails. There's nothing you can do about chemtrails. First of all, I'm not even convinced that they're toxic. That's just something they tell us. Because if they were toxic, the entire world would be poisoned. So that's not happening. People are not dropping dead because of chemtrails. Does it affect the weather? Yes. Okay. But is it happening because you created it to wake yourself up? Possibly. Is it happening to benefit you? Maybe it is. You don't know. Point is, you can't do anything about it, so why worry about it? You need to focus your attention on the things that you can do something about, and that is you and your own life. You can't go out there and expect to change the things in your own life by demanding somebody else change their behavior. Why are you handing over your power to somebody else about how you choose to live your life? And going after them to say that they are controlling your life is a lie. It's not true. Once again, all of this boils down to pointing the finger to something outside of yourself as being the cause of your personal situation in life, which is not true. If you're going to take autonomy over your own life, you have to take responsibility for your life. You have to declare that you are the ruler of your own life. Therefore, anything that happens to you is a result of something that you needed to experience. So take responsibility for that, and take responsibility for how you react to it. Take responsibility for your own sphere of existence. This doesn't mean to say that you take responsibility for the things that other people do. The border is between what happens to you and what somebody else does to you. Now, you play a role in that, absolutely, but you only take responsibility for the role that you play. You don't take responsibility for the role somebody else plays. So a lot of people get upset about that idea as well, because they jump to the extreme example of somebody inflicting harm on them, on their body, in horrible, violent ways, and they will say, am I supposed to take responsibility? Are you saying that that's my fault? Like, listen, this is again the blame game. Instead of taking responsibility for your part in it and changing that, you are looking to blame somebody else. And instead of blaming the perpetrator, you're now blaming me for telling you that you have to take responsibility for your own life, because you don't want to take responsibility. And this is still part of the deflection, part of the I'm angry at the world for my lot in life, which is why we're in this pickle to begin with, because we're looking outside of ourselves and believing that the physical is real. And we forgot that we are metaphysical. We forgot that we are spiritual. We forgot that we are gods, that we have autonomy, that we create our own experience. And so we have flipped it, and we are pointing the finger at everything out there. If you want your autonomy, that has to stop. Not a lot of people are ready to do that. And this is why we need people to rule over us. The majority of people cannot run their own lives without somebody telling them what to do. When you wake up and you realize someone else is running your life and that pisses you off, that's good. This means that you want to run your own life. But in order to do that, you have to take responsibility for your own life. Autonomy and responsibility go hand in hand. You cannot have autonomy and be a victim. You cannot have autonomy and blame other people. If you blame other people for the bad things that happen in your life, you have to give credit to other people for the good things that happen in your life. Part of the ascension process is taking responsibility. Part of the ascension process is realizing how you create your reality. Part of the ascension process is understanding how the way you are and what you think manifests in your experience, how the things that manifest in your experience are there to serve you. There is a duality to taking responsibility, because the idea of being wholly responsible for everything that happens in your life carries a tremendous amount of weight. No one is wholly good or bad. So each of us have things that we have done to others and to ourselves that we're not proud of, and we have things that have happened to us that we would rather erase from memory. Freedom for most is terrifying because it implies complete independence and lack of reliance on others. It implies that you are separate from everything, but this is not the kind of freedom we're looking for. The freedom that you seek involves knowing that you are whole, and what is outside of you is also you. You are taking responsibility for your own creation within the greater creation. I believe that it was Neville Goddard who said that the masses are begging an external being to rescue them from their own creation. This is what we're doing when we blame the external for our circumstances. Even when our lives are scripted, even when you're ruled over and controlled, even when you are imprisoned, you are there for a reason. The physical plane is one of separation, war, duality, and scarcity. The realm of singularity or unity is one of love, abundance, and peace. So in taking responsibility for your role in creation, you see the connection between you and the external. You see how your words, thoughts, and behavior affects yourself and others, and you become kinder, gentler, more understanding and loving, more considerate and balanced. When you realize that you, in your physical form, are merely a fragment of the whole, and the whole represents your greater self, taking responsibility involves loving the whole. This includes what you perceive to be evil, because it's merely a rejection of what is perceived to be good. So in taking responsibility for your own life, you know that you were not consciously creating before, but you are consciously creating now. This is breaking free of the wheel and finding your free will. Now you work with God instead of against God because you become one. If you like this video, please show your support for my channel. Like, share, subscribe, comment, contribute. Contributions over $15 will receive a link to the Johnny Depp Dark Shadows material, so please be sure to include your email address. Kindly visit my website, subscribe to my backup channels, join the Discord group. All links are in the description box below. Thanks for listening. Hope you're having a great day. Bye for now.